The biggest incident in aviation history that left the whole world in a state of shock was Malaysia Flight MH370. Imagine this. A plane suddenly vanishes, leaving everyone completely shocked and confused. For years, detectives have been scouring the seas and searching for every little clue to figure out what caused this mysterious disappearance. But what if the real story lies in some new discoveries and new ideas? Today, we are embarking on an amazing journey to uncover some game-changing discoveries and mind-bending theories that might finally explain everything about what happened to MH370. One small thing before we begin. Please hit that subscribe button. Ready? Let's get started. Malaysia Flight MH370, a regular passenger plane that turned into one of the biggest mysteries ever. This flight, run by Malaysia Airlines, was supposed to take over 200 excited travelers to Beijing, China's buzzing capital city. Some were heading home, while others were pumped to explore a brand new place. On board were 227 passengers from 14 different countries, plus 12 Malaysian crew members, a real mix of folks crossing oceans and continents. It all started on March 8, 2014, when MH370 took off from Kuala Lumpur International Airport, right in Malaysia's busy capital, just as the clock struck midnight. The plan? Fly about 5,570 kilometers in roughly 5 hours and 34 minutes to Beijing. Pretty standard stuff, right? But this trip grabbed the world's attention in a way no one saw coming. The plane was flown by Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah and First Officer Fariq Abdul Hamid, two pros piloting a super-safe Boeing 777-200ER. A high-tech jet airline's love for long flights. Everything seemed chill as MH370 climbed into the dark sky, with passengers getting cozy for the ride. Then, bam! It just disappeared from radar screens somewhere between Kuala Lumpur and Beijing, leaving a total puzzle behind. Captain Zahari and First Officer Fariq knew their stuff and were in charge of keeping everyone safe. Around 1:01 a.m. Malaysian time, while cruising at 35,000 feet, the plane sent its usual check-in through a fancy system called ACARS. Basically the plane's way of texting, "Hey, all good here. No red flags, no worries." Then, at 1:07 a.m., it sent one last message saying everything was running smoothly. And that was it. Business as usual. Until it wasn't. The plane was supposed to check in again at 1:37 a.m., but guess what? That update never showed up. Things got really spooky around 1:19 a.m., just as the plane was about to cross into Vietnamese airspace. The pilots casually told the Kuala Lumpur air traffic controllers, "Good night, Malaysia 370, a normal little sign-off as they were about to switch to a new control team. But then, silence. The next team never heard a peep. Fast forward to today, and scientists have dug up some jaw-dropping new clues and ideas about what went down with Flight MH370. These discoveries are about to flip the script and give us some serious aha moments. First up, number 15, the mystery of cryptic calls and signals. After the plane blinked off the radar, it somehow kept chit-chatting with a satellite hanging out over the Indian Ocean for 6 whole hours. This satellite was owned by a London company called Inmarsat, and those faint signals were like the plane whispering, "I'm still here." It didn't just crash and burn right away. It kept zooming along at high speed and altitude. How? Well, someone or something had flipped off key systems, like the passenger gadgets, cockpit tech, and automatic maintenance updates. Sneaky, right? These whispers to the satellite were super short electronic blips, 7 of them total, 2 came straight from the plane on autopilot, and 5 were pings from the Inmarsat crew trying to say, "Hey, you there?" Plus, there were 2 satellite phone calls dialed out, but no one picked up. Still, those calls dropped some big hints about what was happening. Most of these signals tied back to 2 key details that someone, or something named HEMA, had just started tracking. Next up, number 14, radar clues. Air traffic control computers, plus some hush-hush info from the Malaysian Air Force, showed that after MH370 vanished, it pulled a sharp southwest turn. Then it looped back over the Malay Peninsula and even did a little spin around Penang Island. After its funky loop around Penang Island, the plane zipped northwest, cruising over the Malacca Strait before totally dropping off radar over the Andaman Sea. This little detour lasted over an hour, which makes it way different from your typical hijacking, crash, or even a pilot gone rogue situation. Right from the get-go, this case sent investigators down some seriously weird and unexpected paths. The MH370 puzzle has had the whole world guessing for years, and it's hit families everywhere hard. I mean, how does a super high-tech plane, with all its fancy gadgets and backup systems, just vanish? It's like trying to permanently delete an email. Tough stuff. Completely unplugging a Boeing 777 from today's connected world? Almost impossible. This plane's built to stay online, so when it ghosted, people started throwing out all kinds of ideas. Some pretty wacky, but they stick around because losing a big commercial jet like this just doesn't happen every day. Even though Malaysian officials tried to brush it off and the Air Force stirred up some confusion, the truth about the plane's odd route started spilling out fast. And here's where it gets wild. Number 13. The jaw-dropping trip toward Antarctica. Picture this. Tech wizards in London, working with Inmarsat, used something called Doppler shift logs, like a plane-tracking superpower, to pinpoint MH370's exact spot. At 2:40 a.m., they realized it wasn't just cruising along as expected. It made a big, dramatic turn south over Sumatra, Indonesia's northernmost island. Experts think it kept flying toward Antarctica, way farther than anyone thought it could go. Then, 6 hours later, the Doppler data dropped a bombshell. The plane took a sudden, crazy steep dive. We're talking a drop 5 times faster than normal, happening just a minute or two after crossing what's called the 7th arc. The plane took a terrifying nosedive right into the ocean. That super-fast drop probably tore it apart before it even hit the water. The electronic clues tell us this wasn't some smooth splashdown. It was a total disaster. The plane likely smashed into tons of tiny pieces in a split second. But here's the kicker. Even now, we don't know exactly where it happened or why. The satellite info was cool, but without hard proof, like wreckage. It's still a big question mark. Next up, number 12, the Doppler value. This is some nerdy but awesome stuff. Tech experts figured out the plane turned south thanks to a second clue from Inmarsat called the Doppler value. It's like a secret code that shows how the plane's signal stretched or squished as it zipped around compared to the satellite. Planes and satellites chat this way all the time to stay in touch. The plane's systems are smart. They tweak things to keep the connection smooth. But older satellites? They can be a little wonky, and stuff like their orbit, wobble, or even temperature can mess with the signals, leaving little hints in the data. Now, number 11, the sneaky black boxes. The satellite info dropped a bombshell. The plane kept flying for hours after it went quiet. Malaysian officials finally fessed up that, yep, that was true. But here's the shady part. Malaysia's government wasn't exactly open during the investigation. They had a rep for keeping secrets and dodging trust, especially with corruption rumors swirling. That made things a total mess for investigators from Europe, Australia, and the US. They hit roadblocks, hidden info, and a wild goose chase in the South China Sea meant no floating wreckage turned up. If Malaysia had been straight with everyone from the start, finding debris could have pointed us to the crash site and maybe even those black boxes, the key to unlocking this whole mystery. The hunt for the plane's black boxes sent search teams to a super far-off corner of the ocean. But here's the thing. The ocean's massive. Finding black boxes from another crash, Air France Flight 447, took 2 whole years, even when they had a decent guess about where to look. For MH370, early searches flopped for nearly 2 months before they switched gears to the deep, dark parts of the sea. The surface search wrapped up in April 2014, led by Malaysia, but they weren't exactly equipped to tackle the deep ocean. Lucky for us, Australia stepped up like a champ. They took charge of the search zones pinpointed by satellite data. This area was crazy deep and totally uncharted. So step 1 was mapping the underwater landscape. Only then could they send special sonar gear miles below the waves to sniff out clues. Now, number 10. Secrets of an intentional flight. Here's where it gets juicy. Some clues hint this wasn't just an oopsie accident. The plane's weird, twisty path with zero radio chatter doesn't line up with the usual suspects like tech glitches or pilot slip-ups. Stuff like computer crashes, control issues, wild weather, lightning, birds, or even rare things like meteors or volcanic ash. Nope, none of those explain this tricky route. Even mechanical breakdowns, think sensors, radios, or electrical hiccups, or human errors, don't totally add up to why the plane veered off so deliberately. Scenarios like onboard fires, smoke, a sudden drop in cabin pressure, cargo explosions, or the pilot passing out? Still not the full picture. There's no history of lost pilots, medical emergencies, or outside threats like bombs or attacks to lean on either. That makes this whole thing even more mind-boggling. Next, number 9. Cruising into conspiracy territory. Over in Boulder, Colorado, an electrical engineer named Mike, part of a sharp independent crew, dug deep into radar data. He's convinced that during one of its turns, MH370 shot up to 40,000 feet, almost its max height. That kind of climb would have slammed passengers back into their seats with some serious G-forces. Mike, our engineer from Colorado, came up with a chilling theory. He thinks someone deliberately climbed the plane to 40,000 feet to suck the air out fast, depressurizing it on purpose. Why? Maybe to knock out everyone on board quick and keep things under control during this crazy long flight. Imagine this. The cabin's quiet. Then, bam, oxygen masks drop from the ceiling. That's the only clue anything's wrong. But here's the catch. Those masks only work for about 15 minutes, and only if you're below 13,000 feet. At 40,000 feet? No chance. Passengers would have passed out in seconds. No struggling, no gasping, just out cold. They'd stay slumped in their seats, masks dangling uselessly over their faces, with dim emergency lights casting an eerie glow. Meanwhile, the cockpit? It's got 4 heavy-duty oxygen masks that could keep someone breathing for hours. So, if someone planned this, they could have popped one on and kept flying like nothing happened, speeding toward Penang Island at nearly 600 miles per hour, a ghostly blip on radar screens. Nearby was Butterworth Air Base, home to Malaysian F-18 jets and a sharp air defense radar. But here's the weird part. No one seemed to notice. Mike couldn't shake it. Why didn't the jet scramble or the radar folks blink? It bugged him big time, especially thinking about what this could mean for keeping planes safe. Now, number 8. Sabotage in the clouds. Forget what some folks thought. No one hacked the plane from some secret spot under the front galley where the tech gear lives. Nope, this was an inside job straight from the cockpit. It all went down between 1:01 a.m., when the plane hit 35,000 feet, and 1:21 a.m., when it vanished from secondary radar. In that wild 20-minute window between 1:01 a.m. and 1:21 a.m., the plane's automatic system pinged a regular update to the airline's maintenance crew via satellite. It spilled the beans on fuel, altitude, speed, location, all the juicy details, and showed no red flags. The satellite link was humming along fine. But here's the thing. It's super rare for two pilots to team up for something shady. So, by the time MH370 blinked off the secondary radar, chances are one pilot was out of the game, either knocked out, dead, or locked out of the cockpit. Both military and civilian radars spotted the plane on primary radar, and digging deeper, it looks like whoever was flying turned off the autopilot. That sharp southwest turn? Way too slick for a machine. It had to be human hands. Plus, it seems whoever was in charge depressurized the plane on purpose and flipped off a bunch of the electrical systems right around then. Why? No clue yet. But it accidentally messed up the satellite connection for a bit. Now, number 7. Pilots going rogue. One big theory points fingers at the captain. Could he have taken over without a fight? It's creepy, but not totally new. Stuff like this has happened before. Back in 1997, a Silk Air captain in Singapore allegedly shut off key recorders on a Boeing 737 and slammed it into a river. In 1999, an Egyptair co-pilot nosedived into the ocean off Long Island, taking everyone with him. And just a month before MH370, a Mozambique Airlines captain crashed his plane from way up high, wiping out all on board. Then there's the Germanwings Airbus in 2015. On March 24th, the co-pilot, Andreas Lubitz, locked the pilot out during a bathroom break and smashed the plane into the French Alps. Everyone was lost. Turns out, Lubitz was battling some serious sadness and had even Googled the MH370 mystery a year earlier. Now, pinning this on the co-pilot? That's a tough one to swallow. This guy was young, full of hope, and counting down to his wedding. Hardly the type to spiral into darkness. There's zero sign of personal drama or depression in his story. Plus, he wasn't some stressed-out pilot scraping by at a budget airline. Nope, he was flying the awesome Boeing 777 for Malaysia's top-notch national airline, where pilots are practically heroes. Doesn't sound like a guy plotting trouble, right? Now, number 6, shining a light on Captain Zahari. All eyes started turning to the captain, Zahari Ahmad Shah. Officially, he's painted as the perfect pilot, a calm family guy who loved messing around with flight simulators. His family backed that up big time. But here's where it gets messy. Some red flags got ignored. Police dug into his life and found stuff worth a closer look, but it didn't go far. Work stress? He handled it like a champ. No signs of him being off, edgy, or checked out. His everyday life, family, friends, habits, looked totally normal. CCTV footage from the airport on flight day, and even the 3 flights before, showed Zahari looking sharp, steady, and put together. His usual vibe, how he stood, smiled, moved, was the same as always. No hints of him pulling away from people or switching up his routine. But the official report? It feels off, like it's missing something or clashing with what we know. dig deeper, and there's a sadder side. His wife had left him, leaving him lonely, stuck in his own head for hours between flights. He had a thing for a married woman with kids and got hooked on 2 young social media models. Captain Zahari's life took a wild turn. He tried reaching out to those social media models, but they ghosted him, and some of his messages got a little too creepy. Things weren't the same for him anymore. He drifted far from the stable, happy life he once had. He got lost scrolling social media way too much, and experts think he might have been battling serious depression. Then, the FBI found something spooky on his home flight simulator, a path that looked a lot like MH370's route. Coincidence? Maybe. But Malaysian investigators barely batted an eye at it, even though it could have been a huge clue. All these bits and pieces paint a bigger, messier picture of Zahari. He wasn't just the perfect pilot everyone saw. There was a lot more going on beneath the surface. Now, let's switch gears for today's subscriber pick. Here's a mind-blowing twist on the MH370 saga. What if the plane didn't crash into the Indian Ocean like we've been told? Some folks believe it might still be out there, and here's why. Several passengers' families said their loved ones' phones kept ringing for up to 4 days after the plane supposedly went down. 19 families reported this, and it's got people talking. One heart-wrenching moment stood out. A guy showed on Chinese TV that he could still call his brother's phone, and it rang. That hit hard and made this ringtone theory feel real. A phone expert named Paul Franks is all in on this idea. He popped up on Reddit saying that if MH370 had smashed into the ocean, those phones wouldn't keep ringing for days. Water, especially salty seawater, would wreck them fast, and even if they survived, they couldn't catch a signal from the deep. So, what's the deal? Could those ringing phones actually be a hint that the plane's still out there somewhere? If the plane didn't smash into the ocean, where could it be hiding? And what's up with those ringing phones? With all these juicy clues piling up, it's hard not to wonder if we've got the whole story wrong. What do you think? Drop your thoughts below about what we just unpacked. Now, number 5, the trail of breadcrumbs. Meet Victor Anello, a clever guy from Roanoke, Virginia, who's made waves in an independent research crew. He's been obsessed with digging into MH370's flight path using simulators, something Malaysian investigators totally slept on. Here's what's got him buzzing. Captain Zahari didn't just fly the simulator like a normal trip. Instead, he broke it into chunks, tweaking the fuel and skipping ahead manually until, poof, the plane vanished from the screen. Victor's buddy, Ian Lowe, is convinced this means Zahari was up to something big. Fun fact, Zahari didn't need some basic Microsoft flight game for work, so why use it? Ian thinks it was Zahari's weird way of leaving clues, like dropping breadcrumbs to say goodbye. We don't know exactly why he did it, but Ian says brushing it off as random would be a huge mistake. To him, this odd simulator run is a giant piece of the MH370 puzzle, giving us a peek into Zahari's head and what might have gone down. Next up, number 4, the cyber conspiracy. Historian Norman Davis has a wild theory that ties right into this. He reckons MH370 could have been hijacked, not by someone on board, but by hackers far away. Davis says cyber pros might have tapped into tech designed after 9/11 to stop terror attacks, tech that lets people on the ground steer a plane. Could someone have remotely taken the controls and sent MH370 to a secret spot? Historian Norman Davis has a wild one. He's talking about something called the Boeing Honeywell Uninterruptible Autopilot. He wrote about it in his book, Beneath Another Sky, A Global Journey into History. and it's pretty freaky. This tech could let someone on the ground take over a plane remotely. Davis thinks MH370 might have been carrying secret stuff or important people to Beijing, making it a hot target. Not for one, but two kidnapping attempts. Since we still don't have solid answers, he says it's fair to let our imaginations run wild. Here's his theory. First, a hacker hijacks the plane remotely, aiming to steer it to the U.S. naval base on Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean. But then, plot twist, another hacker jumps in, wresting control away to stop it from getting there. Talk about a high-stakes cyber tug-of-war. Now, number 3, the elusive jungle crash site. Back in September 2019, a British video producer named Ian Wilson had a hunch. He figured MH370 didn't sink in the ocean. What if it crashed in a remote jungle instead? Scrolling through satellite maps, he zeroed in on Southeast Asia's rainforests and spotted something crazy. What looked like a plane stuck against a mountain in the Cambodian jungle, about 60 miles west of Phnom Penh. The pics showed it tilted, like it slammed into the terrain. Sure, some MH370 parts washed up in the Indian Ocean, but only a handful were confirmed, so the ocean crash story still had holes. Fired up, Ian teamed up with his brother Jackie to trek into the jungle and check it out. It wasn't easy. Rough land forced their guides to bail, but the brothers wouldn't quit. Aviation Pro Lieutenant Tim McMillan took a peek and said, "Yeah, it looks like a plane, but it's too small to be a Boeing 777. In the end, experts confirmed it wasn't MH370, just some other wrecked plane. Even after their jungle trek didn't pan out, Ian and Jackie aren't giving up. They're still pumped about their find and plan to head back once they've got the cash for another adventure. Fingers crossed. Now, number 2. Hidden passenger and mystery cargo. Here's a juicy twist. Some folks think a sneaky passenger might have hijacked MH370, slipping on board like a ghost. As investigators poked around, they stumbled on something weird, a secret cargo entry on the flight list. It weighed a hefty 14 stone. That's about 196 pounds. A guy named Mr. Joslin, whose wife and kids were on the plane, spilled the beans. French investigators found this in a big report about passengers and their stuff. Then, Mr. Waterloo, who's all about the sabotage angle, pointed to a story in the French paper Le Parisien about an overloaded container on board. But wait, there's more. After takeoff, someone quietly tacked on an extra 89 kilograms, almost 200 pounds, to the flight list. Why? No idea. Was it a mistake or something shady? The container was stuffed way past its limit, and the whole thing's a head-scratcher. Aviation security guru Tim Termini says there's solid evidence pointing to a hijacking. He sees 4 possibilities: a crew member, a passenger, a rare stowaway, or even a remote hack of the plane's systems. But Philip Baum, another big name in security, pumps the brakes. Officials aren't keen on the stowaway idea, and she's not so sure either. And now, number 1, rogue missiles or mix-ups. Here's a wild one. What if MH370 got blasted out of the sky? Some think it might have been accidentally shot down during a U.S.-Thailand military drill in the South China Sea, happening right when the plane vanished. Could a missile or a communication flub have taken it out? One wild idea is that the plane got shot down by mistake during a U.S.-Thailand military drill in the South China Sea. A former French airline boss, Marc Dugain, swears he saw satellite pics of mystery planes in the area when MH370 vanished, and he got creepy threats to drop it. Another twist? Maybe a country's military thought MH370 was a threat when it went off course and went silent. British author Nigel Cawthorne even thinks U.S. jets might have blasted it, worried it was zooming toward their Diego Garcia base. Cawthorne wonders if secret cargo or VIPs on board drew trouble. Some conspiracy buffs go big, saying a government staged it all for sneaky reasons, like framing someone else or snagging valuable gear. A French passenger's relative, Selina Waterloo, claims the U.S. Air Force took it out to grab tech headed for China, then covered it up. But here's the catch. There's no hard proof. No missile traces, no jet sightings, no verified pics or threats. Pulling off a cover-up this huge without a single leak? Tough to buy. So, what do you think happened to MH370? Which theory vibes with you? Drop your take in the comments. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.